Rightio, we'll get it started. Today we're sitting down with Cheyne Boyd. Cheyne, how are you, mate?
Good, very good.
How you been? Elaborate.
Yeah, like I said before, I am nursing a decent track hangover today. All my Mondays are just, it's clean up, but also, you know, we would have got it when we were racing. The day after a race, you're mentally and physically rooted, and that is me on a Monday. I don't really help myself. I still moto every weekend at Park 4.
Yep.
But also dealing with all the other pressures. I do 4 hours work before open, and especially Saturday because we have to water for Sunday. I do another 3.5 hours of machine work, then another 3 hours of watering again, and in between all that, so there's 10, 11 hours of work.
Yep.
I deal with customers and moto as well, and 3 kids.
It's probably the hardest bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So.
We'll get into Park 4
Yep.
a little bit more towards the end.
Yes.
I do want to touch on your racing career first.
Yes.
And when you were younger, because to me, you were always, say, 10 years above, so I was always looking up to you, Jay Marmont, that era.
Yep.
Not sure if you remember or not, but you did come right at the house once.
Yeah, with Mossy.
With Mossy,
Yeah.
So you were always like, it was you and Jay, basically, for me.
Yep.
So I just want to, for any of those that haven't or aren't familiar with your history, give us a little bit of a rundown from a kid to your pro days.
So, started racing when I was 10. Wasn't naturally talented, was fairly pretty shit. First race, I got last by I got lapped 3 times in a 6-lap race.
Yeah, right.
7 years later, I was on a factory team. So I was always lucky enough where I always had property.
Yep.
So like yourself, had a track in the backyard. And back in the old days as well, going back, we used to ride down the street. We definitely wasn't like the old people who used to ride down Main Street. But we used to ride down my street, and there was vacant land down there, government land. And we made a heap of tracks down there, and so I was lucky enough to be able to practice. So sort of every time I raced, every time I don't know, went to an event, I would have proved that a little bit more, and it just sort of progressed from there.
Yeah, cool.
Never raced this 50, 65, and
Nothing until 14.
Nothing. My first race was on 80.
Yep.
And from there 125, and then that's there on.
So you're doing what, like club, regional, states?
So it was just club for a few years.
Right.
So just club stuff, and then you know how it happens. You know, club turns into regional stuff, and then all of a sudden Vic titles and stuff. And I did 2 Aussie titles on a 125. Got 8th and 12th, I think. And just from there on, Australian titles after like going to senior.
So when was like the breakout for you that you started getting, or you started taking it more serious?
What was it? 98, 99. 99 especially. I'd always been taught by Lee Hogan, and that year he had lost his ride. And wanted to do a shop deal.
Yep.
So 99, me and him did a Peter Stevens deal, and so it sort of took me to that next level. He would work with me anyway during the week, and I had a few little breakout rides. Long story short, got injured at the start of the Supercross. No, it's the start of the motocross. Came back and only did like 2 Supercrosses, but in that time I'd obviously practiced and got better from the injury, and had one night in particular where I went real good, and 4 weeks later after that I got a phone call. I was in Rosebud Sanity buying a new CD or something. And, and then Dakar called me. So
how were your first years with Dakar?
Like a massive learning curve. I remember, so this is a good story to tell. Now we're busting out the stories. First ever test session, so I hadn't even ridden a Yamaha bike. I turn up at Rosebud, my home track. Demon in the sand. First ever test session. Got the little truck there, got Hogs, got Hurley. and just doing some testing, and I cartwheeled the bike maybe 2 or 3 times massive.
Yeah, right.
And I remember just thinking, fuck, what have I done? You know, how's this happening? I guess it was just me excited, overriding.
Yeah.
And then the second day, I'd obviously settled down and rode, and even I remember Hogs telling me, you know, the team were really impressed with you on the second day. Oh shit, he can ride, because they kind of signed me, agreed to take me on without seeing too much of me, because I'd got hurt that year and only came back for sort of 2 races.
Yeah.
And I think it was like, when I say 2 races, it was Superdome, like a back-to-back night. And the first night,
gotcha.
I like did real well. And then maybe the second night, not as good, but still showed like I could ride half decent. So it, the first test session didn't go too good with Dakar, but from there it sort of was a learning. And I think because that year they had Chad, Hurley and Hogs for Supercross, and me on the 125, and they'd never won a 125 Supercross race.
Gotcha.
And it took me 3 rounds to sort of get in. On the first round, I was like stoked. I got 10th at the first round, and I was stoked with it because I hadn't done that good.
Yeah.
You know, and I just thought I finished the night, I got 10th, whatever. They obviously expect a little more and for me to grow, which I was, but by round 4, I think I won. I went on a bit of a winning streak and won like maybe 2 or 3 in a row.
Yeah, right.
Which was pretty cool. So, and then just from there, I just progressed.
Yeah.
Tried to not have setbacks, but it's obviously learning curve and stuff.
So were you a Dakar pretty much your whole professional career?
9 years out of 12.
9 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So.
How many years in lights before you stepped up to?
So the lights the first year, so 125 class.
Yeah.
Lights. 125
That's
class.
3 back then. Yeah, gotcha.
And the 250 class was the open class, you know. So,
and what age did you step up to that?
2001. So first year was just all 125s. Second year was 125 Supercross.
Yep.
And then a half for motocross.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so.
That's a quick trajectory from.
Yeah, I remember, and it's kind of. Certain people react different ways with like, and I understand when team managers and people around the outside of riders say things, do things to try to get the best out of their riders.
Yeah.
I was a fairly quiet rider, kept to myself. I wasn't loud, and it was stressful racing, as you sort of know, and me coming from sort of nothing 7 years later on a factory team under the lights, getting sort of unlimited stuff back then. It was just like a massive sort of deal. I had my face on posters and shit like that, and it just I lost the train of thought where I was going.
A lot of pressure all at once to go from like club racing to you're on the biggest team in the country pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's right, the whole rider, you know, what they would do to try to get the best out of you.
Yeah.
And I remember the first year, we're at the last few rounds of the Supercross, and before the night show, so in between practice and the night show, we're sort of sitting around, and Dakar turns to me and says, "I don't have anything for you next year." And I'm just like,
"Cop that."
Yeah, righto, okay. And then you know, I was sort of took a step back, and I'm just like, oh. And it more disheartened me for the whole night. It didn't fire me up. So whether he wanted to fire me up to like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
It actually worked, and I was one that I was, again, fairly quiet, kept to myself. That shit didn't work with me.
Yeah, it's funny that different riders respond to different things, don't they? Like some need to kick in the ass, some need fun.
I think Jay Marmon, being teammates with him for maybe 4 or 5 years of my career, he was one that wanted people around, wanted to pump him up.
Yeah.
You know, I think news like that would inspire him and push him to go harder. Where news like that disheartened me a bit, and I stressed about that going to the night show.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then as soon as I trying to perform, it's just like as soon as my mind's not fully focused, I lose strength, power, everything. I get deflated. So
isn't it funny how different riders respond to such different things? Like I know, just you mentioned Jay. Probably the best night of his career was Canberra Supercross that night with Chad Reed. You remember it as well, which was
exactly.
Anyone else that'd be the worst, or probably was one of the worst days of their life.
I don't think I would have turned up to race.
Yeah, and it comes out. That's like I watched his whole career. That was the best night it was the only time Chad ever got beat on Australian soil.
100%.
Yeah, so it's. But then I was the same way as you. Like if kicking the ass, I didn't respond.
No.
Either. It was more like more encouragement, fun type of thing. Yeah.
I think like a person like Jay, he was kind of like a robot. He was just a machine.
Yeah.
And that's what I think why he succeeded so well and won so much.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly his whole junior career, but I worked so hard, and just my family upbringing and stuff. You know, my dad was fairly cruisy, never pressured me, never.
Yeah, gotcha.
Never really, yelled and screamed if I didn't do well.
Yeah.
So he got out of it actually pretty light, not doing the whole 50s, 65s. All the Australian titles. There was families that dedicated their whole life every weekend, this and that. My old man did 3 or 4 big events, and then next minute I'm, under a tent with a team and getting flown around to all the races type thing.
Do you think there's value in that, like not being burnt out and having everything given to you as a kid?
For sure, because I grew up with certain riders that were the next best thing.
Yeah.
I remember seeing this one kid on a 60 battling with the 85s and whatever, and they said, and he was like amazing. You might have heard him, Ben Coleman.
I'm familiar with the name, but not.
So Ben was like one of those juniors that were coming through, and he was going to be something and whatever. And I obviously always inspired to be like him, and I always saw him and whatever. And I saw like he was up here, and I slowly crept, and I ended up being on A grade 80s with him. And then when we went to seniors, went to 125s. Went to 125s. Me and him. Well, there was a few. There was probably 3 or 4 of them where we'd all be battling, but he was always the one that sort of came out on top. So you think him going to seniors was going to be, he's the next thing. Yeah. It actually was the opposite. I think by the time he hit 18, man, he had nothing going with racing, and I had signed with Dakar at age 17. So,
isn't it? I just sat down with Daniel Sanders before this interview, and exactly the same. Like didn't race as a kid, didn't give anything given to him. Age 14 or 15, he did his first race, but then even then, second-hand bike, so on and so forth.
Yep.
What do you think that is? Like, because 9 times out of 10, the kid that wins from age like 7 to 12, 13 years old, they're typically burnt out by age 20 and maybe go on by 22.
I don't know. I think it's just doing it from a young age, and as much as it's club racing and junior racing and stuff, there's still pressure and stuff. Yep. And then 9 times out of 10, if they're that successful from a young age, and they're doing it from a young age, there's like the parents go through it as well. So financially, they put a lot into it, but they probably get burnt out as well a little bit, and it just, I think, snowballs from there. Like, look, a kid, if he's that talented from a young age, there's nothing stopping him from going all the way and going from, well, you see Americans, they're normally done by sort of mid to late 20s.
Yeah, there was definitely a trend there, like Villapoto, Dungey, Carmichael, Stewart, 25 to 27, they all retired, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But they've been from 50s. Yeah. Like Cincerillo. Yeah. Like isn't he the most winningest junior, or like?
He's definitely up there, for sure.
Up there. So he won like a bunch of Lorettas and stuff. Races and all those titles and whatever, and he's still up there. It just, I don't know, some can make it through, but then others, and I think it comes, unfortunately, with Australian, it's just, you have to put in a lot of sacrifice and stuff, a lot of money, to get to the point, especially now with factory teams and stuff. back in my day, our day, even with you, there was sort of 5 main teams, 5 or 6. When you got Honda, Suzuki, Cowie, some were better than others. Yamaha, KTM, and even some satellite teams and stuff. There was a lot more to choose from. And so it was healthier, the sport was healthier. Again, stuff used to be unlimited, and the amount of stuff that we used to do, definitely you weren't throwing stuff out and using it once or whatever, but it's just, there was a lot, like budgets were bigger.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get into that. So around like 2010 were your best years?
2009 was my best year.
Well, 9 was. And then you'd probably almost say for the industry in general, like that was around the peak of budgets, sponsorships.
100%.
How's that?
Yeah.
Because you're on the best team.
On the best team.
Podium every weekend.
Yeah, yep. So everything was healthy. So sign-ons were healthy. I think me and Jay were the highest paid riders and we were on the same team.
Yeah.
So,
care to throw out a rough figure?
Pardon?
A rough figure? You don't have to be too
Well,
specific.
it was over 100.
Yeah.
So, and that's from Yamaha. And then on top of that, I remember, goggles. Me and Jay were with Oakley Goggles, and that was 10,000.
Wow.
So just my goggles. Jay's was more because he was current national champion.
Yeah.
So
and then bonuses on top of all that as well.
on top of that. We used to get whole shot bonuses, first lap, qualifying bonuses, whole shot bonuses, first lap lead bonuses, and race wins. So, $10,000 weekend if you clean sweep. So,
to give contrast, what do you think it is now roughly like? If
I
you
think
were
the bonuses are closer to that, but I don't know because I've been out of racing a lot and I don't get into that with too many. I'm not close with the top guys. Yeah. But I think sign-ons ain't as much. And then when the transition was happening, so it was at its peak and then it was coming down, I know sign-ons dropped massive. And I heard certain riders riding for big teams were riding for absolutely fuck all.
Well, I haven't seen it during my short period there of maybe 5 years. Like at the start to the end, it was definitely just even in the product you'd get given or the allowances of product. Yeah, the whole thing sort of tightened up there.
100%. And I know I think with everything and talking about manufacturers and sponsorship and budgets and all that stuff, that also we were in the healthiest Supercross series. Yeah. Spokes promotion ran the best organisation series that. We were doing 8 to 10 rounds of Supercross a year. 4 of them were indoors. You'd always have the outdoor ones at the start, whether it was, and it was kind of like in America where Anaheim's always round one. Yeah. This track, that track. You sort of like the outdoor and Supercross season. Newcastle Supercross, the outdoor at the Speedway, always round 1. Orange Supercross, the week later, always round 2. And then after that, it was Parramatta. It was Brisbane, Ekka, like all these outdoor showgrounds with good tracks. Yeah. I remember as 17, 18-year-old or whatever, when you get to sign in the week after, they would have an envelope with your name on it with the amount of money you won from the week before.
Oh, the cash days.
It was sick.
You beauty.
No, not cash, checks. And I'd go down to the bank on Monday and put me check in the bank. Oh, stop it. So, and then we went from there to then indoors. You had Adelaide indoor, Melbourne indoor, Brisbane indoor, Sydney indoor. You had another 4 rounds of that, and then whether it was another outdoor or something like that, it was a healthy time for the sport.
I want to get back into that in a second, but I've always had one question. So to think back to last year's AMA motocross season, you had Chase and Jet. 1 and 2, same team. Yep. That was basically you and Jay for a long time. Yep. How was that dynamic between you, Jay, and then Dakar?
It was funny. The Marmont family were fairly. They were super nice. They're an awesome family. Jay having a younger brother, Doggy Marmont, Ryan. Yep. When I rode for KTM for the 2 years, so I did 3 years with Dakar, 2 years with KTM, and then 6 years with Dakar, straight. Okay. I was teammates with Jay for those 2 years with KTM. Yeah. And then he joined, I rejoined Yamaha in 05, and then he joined Yamaha at 08. So we were teammates 08, 09, 010.
You got to know each other pretty well.
So we got to know each other pretty well. But with the KTM deal, because it's a Sydney-based team, obviously naturally I'd go up there to test. Well, I'd live at the Marmont's house.
Right.
So I got to a stage where I was living at their house for months at a time, and then I'd battle with Jay on the weekends. And
so never any issues at all?
Nah.
That's wild. Because there was a couple of championships where maybe it was single digits.
Yeah.
Remember one come down to the last race at Coolum.
Yeah, that was 09. Look, by then, we still stayed with each other. Sometimes we'd share the same motel room.
Yeah, right.
When Jay went to America, I actually lived with Doggy because Doggy lost his main training partner.
Yeah.
So I lived at the Marmont's house for 6 months at a time type thing. So, and they were always open to that. They'd always help you out and whatever. They dealt with their race days different to me, and they had their little tricks here and there. So it wouldn't be complete, up front. They wanted their son to win. Jay wanted to win. So they'd have their own little sort of secret. But again, we'd go walk into the truck. I'd have my space, he'd have his. They do their thing, I do mine. So.
And with Dakar, fair across the board? No?
Yeah. No. As everyone was on the same equipment.
Yeah, awesome.
Same stuff.
It's just cool to think, because you'd think like at the peak of the sport, the peak riders in the peak team.
Yep.
Same umbrella.
Yeah.
3 years, you'd think surely something would have come up there at some point.
Well, it was like I say, what Jay got, I got. There was only a couple of times where, I remember testing a shock for Supercross, one that springs to mind right now. And I tested it, and it was a heap better. And Dakar said, we've only got one. I said, well, I've ridden with it, and I want it. Yep. And I actually don't know the end result, but I'm pretty sure I got what I wanted.
Yeah.
But I know Jay had other faults or needs that he wanted to, and so they went a different way with him. But it was just like a one-off thing. But as I said, there was no real favoritism in the team.
Yeah, that's cool.
What I got, he got.
And then towards the later stages of your career, you finished up with Dakar, went to Lights for a year?
No, so finished up with Dakar. That was a bit of a shock because I didn't have a bad year. I think I still finished maybe fourth. So 09, me and Jay, it came down to the wire. As I said, single digits going in the last round. And to be honest, that weekend I just lost my first race. I'd done 11 straight moto wins, and Jay bet me on the second last round in the last moto. I just cooked myself, back blew out. I'd fastest qualify in Perth, so at Wanneroo. Fastest qualifier, one Moto 1, one Moto 2, and just...
You were awesome in the sand. That just brings back memories.
Well, that's where I grew up.
Yes, so, yeah. I was just remembering it now.
Yeah. So, back blew out, everything, and I went across the line, my streak was over, and again, I still won the overall. I still got the paycheck and everything and whatever, but going in the last round, I probably, because it was back-to-back weekends, I probably cooked myself that little bit too much during the week, and I turned up on at Coolum, and I was just like, I was spent.
That was it.
And Jay just put in a good performance, and we unfortunately, I came up short. He won. Team was happy still. They went 1-2.
Yeah. Someone sting a bit?
A little bit, because I never knew that was going to be the last chance I had to go at it. So I honestly feel at that stage, I was so strong and I won so many motos. I'm like, how can I be beaten? I wasn't cocky. I wasn't, saying I'm that good. How good am I? I was in a position, my body was healthy. Everything was just good, and I did it so easy. Things just clicked. Everything clicked. And then 09 was the last of the carburetor / steel frame.
That's gone back a while.
So that's 09. So, and then they went to the Yamaha 2010, brought out that new Yamaha with the reverse motor.
Is that when they reversed it? It's been that long. Wow.
So that was the year. So this was the year that bike came in. Obviously a brand new bike, no one knew what it was doing.
These were the JGR, James Stewart days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I remember they first gave me one and it was stock. And I remember riding it down the road, like on all my sort of private tracks and stuff. And I actually liked it a lot.
Yep.
And I thought, this is cool, like new. It was like new shape, new this, and I'm like, yeah, I like it. Dead stock suspension. Came to testing, and we did a week of testing with Yamaha. And they obviously trying to get information from her. They had good connections with Rinaldi stuff in Europe.
Yeah.
I don't think too much in the US, but not too many people knew what to do with them. And then all of a sudden they made this bike that I enjoyed the first few months of riding it. They made this thing just almost unrideable.
Mm.
And we went to round 1, round 2, round 3, and both me and Jay weren't going that good.
So when you say unrideable, what do you get?
When I say unrideable, it's just...
what's the feedback from the bike?
Just hard to ride. It just was that
you
foreign. And the thing is, at the end of each model, you've got the bike dialed. So you got to remember, it's every 5 years they change their bike. It gets a full makeover.
And usually it's a step backwards that first year, maybe 2.
Yeah, not these days.
Yeah.
Like Yamaha with their new 23 model, with the whole new shape, new everything, new look, new everything, I feel they nailed it pretty well.
Yeah.
So, hence like Tomac signing for Yamaha.
Yeah, for sure.
And riding
Yeah.
that new bike.
It was just the reason I said that is I was just with Chucky Sanders and KTM had just made a big switch.
Yes.
And you'll sort of see overseas and abroad, it's maybe the results have slipped a bit, and there's a few vocal riders about that, but same sort of thing. Big change, take a year or 2 to figure it out.
Well, by the end of 09, and just so having my best year, the bike was that dialed. Like they had factory stuff from Olin's that money couldn't buy.
Yeah.
So the suspension was amazing, and the bike was that developed. And I'm spewing because I would have bought that bike if I won that championship, and that's a bike that would be pretty cool to have.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, the last of that model, and plus none of the stuff could be put on the new one. So there was 50mm forks, Olin's forks on the thing, factory shock. Is just, the whole bike was amazing, but because I didn't win, I didn't buy it. But yeah, so 2010, the first few rounds we struggled. And I just, all of a sudden, after the last, you know, and obviously being a factory rider, you have the debriefs afterwards, and Dakar was definitely one that, you know, we had the debrief before the day started, debrief after. You know, you have chats throughout the day, and there's a lot of debriefing with what the heck's going on when we're not winning.
With Dakar, it seems any rider that's ever gone to him has had a big step up in performance. What's that? From the actual rider's perspective? He puts a price,
and I totally get it. I think Yamaha's the best bike to ride, but the whole infrastructure around his team, and he puts a price on that, I know.
So what do you mean by that, puts a price on it?
He just knows his infrastructure, he can offer and give you the best chance to win over anyone else in the field. Yeah. So I was, all Australian riders just did 1 year deals. And I was the first, after my 08 performance, I nearly won the Supercross title in 07. I went head to head last round with Dan Reardon and won that last round. And the last time I saw Dan Reardon is I pushed him that wide in the first corner. Me and him went, you know, going for the championship. I get the jump, we push out. I saw him cartwheeling into the stands. And I thought, I'm going to do this. And I go around, it was a mud race, and come around, win the race, and he came across the line in second. So out of all the chaos that was going on, he made his way through, and I lost that title.
So back to Dakar, is it the personnel, is it the bikes, is it the connections overseas? Like what makes him different to, say, every other team, basically?
Like I said, he puts a price on it, and I was the first rider to do a 2-year deal. And when he will negotiate with a 2-year deal, I was in negotiations with another team.
Yeah.
And they actually offered me 30,000 more a year. So in 2 years, that's an extra 60,000. And I obviously say, you know, as much as I want to stay with you, I can't ignore this deal.
Yeah.
And this offer. And Daka came up a bit and whatever, but he got to a price and he said, that's all you're getting. He goes, I know I've got everything for you to win. If you want to go there, go there. But you need to understand that I've got everything you need to win. And
is this when you went to KTM?
Pardon?
Is this when you went to KTM or you stayed?
No, Honda.
Honda.
Honda was the other bidder. So this is at the end of 08.
Gotcha.
So I opted to stay with Dakar. So it turns out, you know, the amount of races I won in 09, you know, stayed with a familiar team. I didn't have to get used to anything. Again, his connections with Europe, just everything they had was just a step above everyone. And Dakar's confidence, like me and him grew to be close. You know, half the time would be traveling, all the time would be traveling together. And me and him would be hanging out at the airport like we're just two mates. And like we'd laugh about certain stuff and, you know, what I got up to, you know, during the week and he would ask me questions about, hey, what's this guy like? What's that guy? And again, it was just like mates hanging out type thing.
Yeah, gotcha. So I don't know from a bar of soap, just watch from a distance, quite serious?
When it comes to race day, yeah.
Like you hear stories in America of the star Yamaha manager, he'll really push them when they're not performing.
Yep.
Was Dakar like that as well?
Dakar was like that. And again, he had his ways and stuff. And I mentioned it before, like certain ways didn't work with me.
Yeah.
But there's many a times, and now talking about, I haven't thought about this stuff in years and years. But when you're on a factory team, it's awesome and whatever, but even when they say there's no pressure, there is pressure. And I'd been called into his office because it was a Geelong-based team, Victoria-based team, and I was on the Mornington Peninsula. I'd catch a ferry over, you know, would have, you know, whether it's picking up bikes or swapping bikes over, whatever, but there was plenty of times when I was called to come over, so I'd jump on the ferry, go over and get please explain what's going on.
Really?
Yeah. So, you know, your results ain't there. And it came down to, you know, negotiations as well for the year after. He would just bring it all up and just go, well, you ain't winning. How many race wins did you get this year? And what, you think you deserve more? Not that I never had a manager.
Yeah.
I never had a parent that interfered.
Yeah.
You know, it was all me.
Yeah,
and
gotcha.
I would learn, you know, and again, I would go back to home and explain to me mum and dad, and they'd have their questions, and whether they spoke, I can't remember if they ever spoke on the phone or whatever, but negotiations was all me. And he would just, like, some years were better than others. I think the best thing you can do for yourself as a racer is be the guy that everyone wants.
Yeah.
So if you're that guy, and I had years where the King brother, Darryl King was on, Troy Carroll was on,
Yep.
and it took the pressure off me a little bit because they were hired to win, where I was still hired to develop and get better.
Gotcha.
And you know, some of those negotiations for those years were easy because they're like, mate, you riding awesome, this and that. You know, we're going to put your money up to this. Your bonuses are up to that now. And yeah, happy days. Where there's times where maybe I was getting another offer from another team and I felt that, you know, their offer, like, hey, Dakar, they've offered me this. What can you do? And he said, well, I'm only offering you this because
He seems very honest.
Yeah, it's just straight up. It's business.
Yeah.
To him.
Yeah.
But again, those few good years, and at one stage I had 2 or 3 teams after me. He bent over backwards to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay.
But also put a price on his team.
Yeah.
you know, he...
Which I think's fair, because I can't do it off the top of my head, but any rider that's pretty well gone there, whether it be Aaron Taney recently or you and Jay back in the day, like you see an immediate step up in the results. You think, what is that, doing that?
And back in the day, we didn't even have factory tyres. I'm spewing. So I rode for him for 9 years out of 11. I pitted out of the crummy little Yamaha truck, still a good truck. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's not what it is today.
It wasn't a semi. So the year I left, he gets a semi.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, they're allowed to run factory tyres. They've got the connection with factory tyres.
It must have been when that Monster and Rockstar Energy started coming in money as well.
No, I was Rockstar.
Yeah.
So that money was already in there.
Yeah.
They just got the opportunity to run factory tyres. And I was like, fuck. Like, how's that? The year I leave, they've got this nice big semi.
Surely you could go in there now and just get one set for him.
Yeah.
Just to try him.
Oh, I've tried them.
Yeah, a few.
So I've, you know, and this is getting off the subject a little bit, but when, you know, racing didn't work out and I was in the real world for, and I know you're going to touch on this, the whole Park 4MX.
Let's go, into retirement and off to there.
Well, yeah, it's just contracts didn't line up. I was practicing down at a quarry, like a track in Sale, the Cruisix ride park.
Yep.
Before it was the ride park. And, you know, when contracts weren't lining up, he offered me a job and was like, you need money, I'll give you some. And I started working for 6 months. So first time ever. So what year was that? I would have been 28, 29.
First time ever working a job, 28 years old.
Yeah.
How's that?
So it was good because it was in a quarry. And half the time me and his son were like sneaking off in the loader or the digger, and he'd cut in because it's a massive quarry and they've got a lot of tracks, a lot of free ride bits.
Yeah.
And, you know, as much as we were supposed to be working, we're still shaping jumps or something.
It's half work, half play.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I got to ride after work.
Yeah, cool.
So it was hard. Me and my wife now, so back then girlfriend, we'd bought our first house. So that was exciting times. And then 18 months later, I had to go to Sale for 5 days a week. So I'd live down there for 5 days, come back on weekends, and then go back Monday morning. So
how'd you go from being a professional athlete, like you're training every day, you're riding every day, you're on your jobs to get quicker and be better, and then you kind of don't know what your job is?
Yeah, it was hard, again, because there's so much success in 09 and then 010. I really think that I didn't have a bad season. Still got podiums and stuff, but we didn't win. And then it just so happened that Josh Coppins wanted to come home. He'd been racing in Europe for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And he got in contact with Dakar and said, I want to come over. So what they were paying me, Josh actually asked for under half that and said, just give me a go, but make my bonuses massive.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't have hard feelings against it. It screwed me pretty hard. You know, 2 highest paid riders. And at the end of the day, Dakar's words were, you know, like, if you'd won the championship, you would be staying. If Jay won the championship, he'd be staying. And unfortunately...
It's a brutal side of the sport, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, it's business.
Yeah,
I get it now. Back then,
business.
you're heartbroken. But I was, like, not cocky, but honestly, I felt that I was still at my best and I could still win races. I'm like, oh, okay, no worries. I remember when he said, can you come over? We need to talk about it all. And I didn't even jerry on or whatever. I'm like, okay, we're going to negotiate. Sits me down or whatever, and he goes, hey, let's go to lunch. I'm like, okay. And before we went, he goes, next year I actually don't have nothing for you. And I said, really? And he was like, yeah, but hey, let's go to lunch. And so he took me out to lunch and whatever, and he's like, mate, I feel real bad. This is the hardest decision, this and that, but we don't have nothing for you. And in my head, I'm like, okay. And I was kind of like, I get to have a change. Well, certain things happen, certain riders, and I was almost left out. So I know at the stage Dan Reardon was in the midst, whether Cowie was pulling back a bit, budgets weren't there or whatever. So the other team that I had in mind and wanted to ride for was Honda. But it turns out that he was trying to go to Honda as well. And whatever, lucky enough, I don't know what direction he went, but I got the ride for low money. And I'd got myself into a situation, and I'm fairly upfront with it, and I got myself in a situation where I had a lot of money coming in, and it was easy money. Being a racer, it comes pretty easy, and I guess I don't learn. I was still paying off a block of land. I had 1 or 2 cars too many. I just kept on. I thought it was a thing that you get a new car every 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
And I just kept on getting these new cars all the time, and something new would come out. At one stage, I had 2 FPVs, like the Turbo Ute and the Turbo Territory.
Yeah.
So I had matching FPVs. And back then, the repayments were like $3.5 grand a month or something, just on cars.
So I'm going to take a guess, like you're making between 200 to 300,000 a year?
No, not that.
Not
So it'd be between, I can't remember the exact figure, but, well, we'll put it this way. I won 4 straight overalls, that's 40 grand. My sign-on was around 100, I think. And then you get your little personal ones, 10 grand or whatever. So, you know, it's anywhere from 150. Obviously, second place, you don't get 10 grand. It's like 5 or 6, and then third was 3. So add all those things up.
Plus back then, it's...
Yeah. Oh, you're earning like 20 years ago?
Yeah. It's always double.
15, 20 years ago. Like, if you're earning like between 150 and 200 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Yeah, you're bowling.
And of course, yeah, exactly. And that's what
especially when you're doing it riding the motorbike too.
Yeah, exactly. Doing that, and I didn't work. I just hung out. Back then, I got to sign my 2-year deal. They gave me a jet ski as well, so a free jet ski. So I was down the beach all summer riding this free jet ski. Just, you know, you had to get wheels for your car. You couldn't be rolling on stock wheels.
Yeah.
So I was always, and I remember, funny little story. I thought I was mad and did a burnout and hit the gutter, wrecked a set of rims, and next day just go down and buy a new set of rims just because you couldn't run on stockies. So it was just a lot. Money came easy to me, and then when it wasn't there, I got myself in a real bad situation where one day I was only getting this amount of money. So the repayments for my cars, my new sign-on with Honda wasn't even going to cover the repayments on my cars and land. And I'm like, and that's where my dad, and we sort of went in damage control, so started selling cars like they were going out of fashion. Kept the cheapest and the best one.
Yeah.
Most practical, which was a Ute.
Yeah.
And yeah, just went into damage control and started working my ass off, and I sort of, you know, looking back on it now, and I think even at the time, you know, new team and everything, and it was exciting or whatever, but just all of a sudden I've got this new bike, new suspension people, new infrastructure and whatever, and I was so used to this one particular one being Dakars. It was hard to change. I'm not saying it was all them, it was me as well.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I wouldn't give a bit.
Yeah.
And they were just like, well, we've only got this. And it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm still not happy. I still like this. And not that we butted heads. I think that year, because I'm actually like best friends with the owner, and now I'm closer than ever now these days.
Yeah.
But back then, again, it was business, and he's running a team, and I got to a point where I was trying to race for it because of the sign-on wasn't there, and you know, you can't rely on bonuses. It's not good going racing relying on bonuses, because I felt, because my bonuses with Honda were big, my sign-on was low.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh fuck. Well, I won so many races 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like, and even if it's less than 2 years ago, I won this amount of races, I'm going to earn at least this much with bonuses.
They're wishful thoughts.
It doesn't happen like that. To go on the weekend to try to earn money, to be an athlete, to be a motocrosser is not a good feeling.
Nah, it's counterintuitive. Like, you just want to do your best and win races, but then when you add in the financials and the stress and the what if it doesn't work out, and it's like that detracts from your performance, so then your performance isn't as good, and then you're not getting either of them. And it's
and again, add a new team into it.
Well, especially you've just had the best for nearly 10 years straight.
Yep.
Like, nothing, no offense to any other team, but it was just never going to be that good.
No.
So you can see why it's.
Exactly. And everyone sort of knew it as well. Like you said, like, why is it when a rider goes to him, they do better? Because it's just the infrastructure there. I think this day and age, certain teams have stepped up. I guess there's teams. I don't know. I've been out of racing a lot, but you know, KTM's got their sort of teams going or whatever. I feel that they're not as big as what they used to, because Jeff Lease used to be heavily involved with KTM team, and that was another semi-trailer, you know, really good infrastructure. They had, it was all in-house type stuff, so they would get a lot of overseas information and stuff like that. You know, but even Suzuki had a good team. You know them personally. Like, Jay Foreman was good at what he did.
Yeah, I kind of caught the tailwind of that. So
yeah.
That was their last year was the year I was with them.
Yep.
So budgets were pretty tight, enthusiasm was pretty low.
Yeah.
But it was unreal to see the inner workings of it. Like, you could see the history of it, all the numbers on the board, all the parts, all the tyres. Like, that was, for a privateer to compete with it, it's not. I mean, it can happen, but it's not. It's not very realistic.
No, not at all.
Yeah. So we'll segue from the racing days. We'll go into Park 4.
Yep.
I thought something that's cool. Have you ever not ridden for a period of your life?
So no, I've kind of, there was only one stage in my life, my whole life, that I had, well, obviously when I, growing up, I always had bikes and whatever, and I got into club racing and shit like that. And I definitely would have been in high school riding 125s, and at one stage, I don't know what it was, but I just made this transition as like, I'm going to give up dirt bikes and race downhill mountain biking. And hadn't really done it. I did have a mountain bike. I was hitting dirt jumps and, you know, half decent at it, and done a few bombs down like steep hills. And I obviously have that adrenaline rush, you know, that adrenaline drive that, you know, and that feeling that you want to get from it, and just bombing down hills. I'm like, this is mad. So I entered a downhill race at Mount Beauty. Me and my dad went up there. It was cruisy. We slept in a tent. Cruise down Main Street the night before, you practice all morning, all day, and then you have one run. I did pretty good, and I'm like, I'm going to be a downhill mountain biker. You know, maybe a couple of months went by. I'd bombed so many fire trails and shit and whatever. I actually went to my shed, got my dirt bike out again. I'll have a little ride, and as soon as I had that little ride, I fell back in love with the ride, and I'm like, fuck, I've missed it.
The reason I bring that up is, like, say your departure from the sport, you lost your ride and down it went. And most people would sort of be bitter and maybe resent bikes for a little bit from that, but you went out and brought a ride park. You ride every day at that ride park. Yep. You coach in between those days at the ride park. Like, it's still...
So I'll tell you a little story. So I, you know, obviously stepped away from racing. The last ditch effort, just getting back to the racing, I tried to do a privateer thing, do my own team, try to gather much money and sponsorship as I could. Again, I was trying to race for money, and it wasn't good. It got to a stage where I ain't doing this no more. And I think we touched on it before. I started working down at Cruisik's Quarry.
Yep.
Still got the opportunity to ride during the week. And I was lucky enough that Honda still gave me some bikes because I wanted to do some racing. And this and that. So Honda, because they were the last manufacturer I rode for, they gave me some bikes, and I literally just, hey, I've got plans of doing some one-offs. And Dan, the owner, Dan Krusik, he gave me a job. He said, hey, let's go do some racing. So after work, I was still training. Because in my own mind, I felt that I still could do. I wasn't done with racing, and I felt that I could still get good results. And so I was still working during the week, but still getting a couple of days riding on the during the week. and then ride on the weekends and stuff. And then I ended up doing some motocross races, and one in particular, one Thaggy. So we turned up, just pit 10 and all, 2013, and turn up, been working all week. Dan was, nice enough. He'd give me a day off here or there to rest or get ready and whatever, because we're going there and we want to do good. Well, the first moto, I got 5th in the first moto. Second moto, I was battling with Jay, so my old teammate. He was riding for CD at the time.
Yep.
And battling with him for 4th. So it was like a heated battle. And in my mind, I'm just like, fuck, I'm going to get him. I'm going to do this. Well, Billy McKenzie, he was the second rider for CDR. He was up in front of us, crash. I'm flying through and literally he's in the middle of the straight, crash. Jay goes one side, I go the other side. He didn't even look, and the dumbass just rides straight in front of me and collects me. And his handlebar hit me here, so I broke ribs. I went cartwheeling. And from that day on, I remember just broken. I was in the race safe. I was that banged up. I was walking back to my car. So Dan had started packing up my car. My bike was loaded. My girlfriend at the time was with me. And I was walking through, and not fucking one person, and here I am, I've given my whole life to this sport and this industry, and I'm just fucking walking back like a broken soldier, and just looking around, everyone's packing up, no one gives a fuck.
It's brutal.
And it's just like, fuck, and I wanted to go, say something to Billy, thanks for fucking near killing me. But they were off doing the thing. See the other, no one said, oh fuck, sorry about that. Bad luck about that. Hey, how good was your moto? The only thing I heard, that the Honda bosses weren't happy that I was the only Honda at the front, because their current riders were behind me at the time. So if I had got that result, it might have resulted in something else.
Going again
or doing something, but it just didn't happen. But things happen for a reason, and this is one thing, and just getting back, I honestly believe that things happen for a reason. So from there, I sort of almost finished up with Dan. I was sick of driving down there.
Yep.
So I started working for my dad again. He's a plumber, and just doing odd bits here and there and whatever, trying to earn money. And all of a sudden I get this call from Craig Anderson. And you might not even know this. Remember, 2013, Ty Simmons was riding for, and everyone, if
That's
you don't
right.
know, he's a young, I think junior Australian champion or whatever.
Ty was going to be like a Jet Lawrence, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. He was an up-and-comer. And he'd been riding for KTM for a lot of years, but for however reason, he ended up being with Ando, with his little Yamaha team. Ando calls me and says, Ty's retiring, and what's it going to take to get you on the team? I said, well, I'm earning around $1,000 a week at the moment. He goes, I'll give you $1,000 to come back racing. And I just went, and I said to me old man, I said, you wouldn't guess, we're up in a roof in Frankston. I said, Ando's just offered me a ride, and he's going to pay me what you're paying me now.
Yeah.
He goes, so I got to go train. So I literally left the job, and my old man's that cruisy. He's like, yeah, all good.
Yeah, beauty.
And straight away, flew up to Newcastle. First session with that, with Ando. They bring out Ty's race bike. The second lap, I M4-ended the thing fucking big. And I thought it was me. It's just and I guess Ando's a bit out of touch, this and that. Because he had in his mind, you nearly went 5-5 at that one Thaggy race until you got taken out. And I said, I know I can do better. And Ando's I know you can do better. We can do this. So then, super positive, gets behind me, tried to give me everything I needed. They sent me back with a near stock practice bike. Well, I was carving it, loving it and whatever. But came to race day, they'd give me this race bike that was supposedly the same
This old chestnut.
The thing was the biggest piece of shit, and whatever they'd done to it, because I had a stock one at home and it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was like loving it. And then they wouldn't even have me saying, let me race that one. Not doing that. Why not? I just like, we're not doing that. This is your buy. And it just like, it lasted like 1 round, then 2 round, and by the 3rd round, I said, this ain't happening, and whatever. So, again, I was like, I raced Ando, and even when racing him, we were sort of friends. You know, back then it was more of a family thing in the pits. You know, I was good friends with Pippi Harrison, the Honda Honda team manager, Jay Foreman. You know, we would always be staying in the same motels and stuff, so you would just be friends with everyone. I was real good friends with all the mechanics from the other teams and stuff, but you had a good bond with your team and a lot of others.
How did it end with Ando?
Not great at all. I told the Yamaha bosses, I said, I love the bike, there's nothing wrong with the bike, but that particular bike, and I just can't keep on going like that.
Did you ever figure out what it was?
No, I think whoever was on the development side had no idea, and if that was the bike Ty Simmons was riding, I fucking totally understand why he gave it in and shut shop. And from there, he never raced again.
Yeah.
He's hurdling cattle and probably earning squillions.
It looks like he's having a good time.
He's having a good time, and from there, I totally understood that. Again, I think it came down to a developer.
So that bike retired 2 riders.
Yeah, pretty much.
In a year.
But then I hear that the guy, and I can't actually remember his name.
I don't know if I want to say it.
Don't say it if you know the guy, because at the end of the day, I heard he was a dick because he was talking shit about me. Yeah. It's just like, motherfucker, I knew 2 years ago, and then you give me this. Oh, well, no, it's not 2 years ago. A few years ago. Like, for one, your bike near killed me. 2, I understand why Ty Simmons retired now. Like, fuck. It just... but again, me being me, I went up to Ray Howard at the time. He was the head of Yamaha Racing. Yeah. And I said, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm not going to continue with Ando's team. I actually like the bike, and his words were, so you like the bike? And I said, yeah, I actually like the bike. I have a stock one at home. Yeah. So it didn't end well with that. I like Ando. Yeah. Him and his wife did an amazing job running that team, or whatever they tried to do, what they did. And again, I'm sort of through social media now friends with him and stuff, and wouldn't want him to get angry at this. I'm not paying him out. It didn't work for me. So it didn't, and but it didn't end well. And he'd probably say the same. Ando's a straight up sort of guy. He would say the same. But it didn't end well because I pretty much said, I can't ride your bike. I can't. If you're not willing to move a little bit, this and that. Again, a privateer team, and that was my last ditch effort. But, and again, you said let's talk about Park 4, and this is where I think things happen for a reason. So in those last few races of me knowing that it's coming to an end, I drove my ute out to Broadmeadows and spoke to the owner. He gave me a key to ride. I said, hey mate, I wanted to come out riding. Are you going to be there? I've got no one to practice with. Are you going to be there? And he goes, yeah, I'll be there. I'll watch you. So went there, motoed or whatever. In between motos, was just sitting on the back of my ute. And he was a grumpy old guy. You know, smoked, drank, overweight, just dark on the world type thing. Yeah. And he says, I think I'm going to sell this place. I said, really? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, I'd be keen to buy it. I'm pretty sure racing's like, and I sort of knew going into the last few races that, fuck, this ain't working with Ando's team or whatever. Yeah. And whatever. But the only reason I was at Broadmeadows is because Ando gave me an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And this is where everything just lined up. And I was the first person to hear out of Al's mouth that he was selling Broadmeadows. And I just did whatever I could to buy it and ended up doing the deal probably a couple of months later. And the changeover dragged out and it turned nasty because he wanted to get out of it and whatever, and he just kept on putting the pressure, you need to do it, and it was more me just trying to gather the money. I probably overpaid, you know, him shit talking, you know, how much money he used to make off it. I knew it was a rundown old, everyone knew Broadmeadows was a hunk of junk.
Well, it used to be known as Pipeworks back in the day. Was it Broadmeadows? Yeah, it was a concrete skate park.
Yeah, fucking hell.
It wasn't nice.
Kickers in every jump, bricks hanging out of the jumps.
Better off down the local skate park than the way it was.
Yeah, exactly. So he'd run it into the ground and whatever, and
it's amazing anybody went there back then. Look, like considering how it is now.
Well, they still got riders, you know, and the local riders and stuff, and
like road races.
Yeah. Well, I remember a road racer was running his super motard there. With super motard wheels and shit.
Yeah, slicks.
So slicks.
Yeah.
And supposedly he was ripping around there because it was just hard packed shit. So, so things happen for reasons, and I honestly feel everything happening in my life led to that point, because that was leading me to the point of my next stage of my life.
Yeah.
And here we are 10 years later, I'm sitting with you.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
Yeah.
So how is running Park 4 compared to racing? You enjoy it more or less?
I think I'm at a stage of my life where, you know, like the thought of racing, the thought of that, like I'm done with it. Even when I got Park 4, I still did some supercross races. Because again, I still felt like I was something.
Well, yeah, we raced once. It was at the AusX Open, maybe 2016.
Yep.
Maybe you did that?
Yep.
Yeah, that was
I think my last race was 17, maybe, but it's...
Gotcha.
Yeah, but probably 16 was my last racing year.
Yeah, would have been... no, sorry, would have been 15 that year.
Yeah.
At the AusX, but yeah, anyway. Yeah, cool. So running Park 4, that's going well. I did want to touch, you tried to do quarter pipe once.
Yes.
How'd that?
So I was just, again, I've lost that drive to race. The whole, again, I wouldn't be going there to just make up the field and run around. Like, people would still be looking at me expecting. And again, I just don't, the thought of that pressure, the thought of going to a race, the few that I'd done, like you say, in 16 or whatever, I'd just sit in there, and I actually didn't enjoy it. Like, I was doing it, there's a lot of work building up to that. I still have to, we had kids by then. Me and my wife had our first kid, and maybe she would have been pregnant with our second, and here I am still trying to ride when we have a business and stuff. And there's a lot of work to go into racing. And a lot of it's like, you know, being a racer, being an athlete, you know, like recovery and stuff. And when you're trying to set up a business, and I was leaving it with the guys I hardly knew and stuff. My business, the income and shit, I was going off to race and letting these guys run my ride park and stuff. I trusted them, and they did a good job, but I don't know how I did it back then. But again, I would be at the race thinking about what's going on there. I'd be like, hey, is everything good? Hey, we just had someone crash. I had to call an ambulance. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, you got to think, while you're doing all that, your competitors are thinking just about racing and what they're going to do. It's
when they're flying into Melbourne or whatever, they're sipping on waters, they're cruising, they would have got a massage the day before, whatever the fuck it is.
You're bouncing around the skid steer.
And I'm just in the bobcat, I'm getting dragged behind a truck, still trying to get me bike ready. I remember my wife, bloody, with the heat gun, heating up stickers so I could put them on my bike.
Yeah.
Shit like that.
See, I always respected you for that. Like, so for me, it's sort of, after having all of that, and then not having it, I kind of lost interest just in riding it itself. A lot of that was probably injuries. I just got sick of putting in the effort, getting hurt, putting the effort, getting hurt. Whereas you just continually rode no matter what. I never ever
thought of the injuries.
Yeah.
That never even came to mind, because at the end of the day, if you get injured, my business would be fucked.
Yeah.
But again, I'd still be trying to race Australia's best. And there was one, I was definitely, Park 4, it was a weird one. It was in Sunshine. It was round, maybe the first round, and whatever. I got fourth in the main, and I got close to podium. And you know, that drove me to do a few more and stuff. Because again, I still felt in my head I was fast, and I was fast. Like, it's like
you still are today.
Yeah. Well,
if they had an MX National at Park 4, you'd go on top 3.
100%. 100%. Yeah, well, it depends on how big my bonus is. So,
1 month.
yeah. So
You're definitely going to qualify first. I'll give you that.
Yeah, that's it. So it's yeah, I just have no drive or anything to go racing. The thought of it just does not interest me one bit. But then what comes there? How am I going to fulfill this need that I've got still? So I started getting into best whips.
Mm-hmm.
I did enduro cross, which that can eat a dick. Those enduro crosses are the gnarliest thing. And I'm like, again, I'm not bad on a bike. I can wheelie over shit and whatever.
Yeah.
But riding through rocks on a corner, hitting logs.
No good.
Like wheelie is like, again, I went to Clipsal 500.
Yeah.
In Adelaide. And there was a enduro cross there. So they had Mike Brown there and Cody Webb, which is their top enduro riders.
Yep.
And they were the main guys, and another American actually, and then a heap of Australian. You need to do something, right?
No, you're right. I was just messaging
You
Mick.
just 100% distracted me, so I'm like...
Mick messaged me because Mick's up next. Yeah, you're right.
So they get these Cody Webb, Mike Brown, and another American rider. But then you have the Aussie guys, like... Can't even think.
Is that Milner, Sanders?
No, they're there. Maybe, I don't remember them, but it was... enduro cross they called it. So I was half supercross, half enduro cross, and they contacted me, hey, you'll be good at this. I'm like, yeah, sweet. The enduro cross part of it, I killed it in the supercross part. I was the only one to do a certain section.
I remember this race, yeah, Toby Price did it.
Yeah. And I was the only one doing this supercross setting, this section. But when it came to the logs, it was the gnarliest, like trying to jump 2 or 3 logs. There'd be a log down lower, so a raised log, a lower log. So if you're slow, you drop down in it, wheelie another one, then drop out of it. Well, the Americans were fucking mono and wheel tapping over the whole lot. And I did it, but fuck, it was the scariest thing. I think they did over 3 days, like maybe 6 races. And the last race, or the second last race on the last day, I tagged bars off the start with one of the Americans. I was the only Aussie that podiumed. So I got third on one night against Brown and Webb.
Yeah.
But yeah, tagged bars off the start and went headfirst into a log and just banged myself up and thought, what the fuck am I doing here? I will never. My bike was trashed. Like... everything was bent, everything was scratched.
Yeah.
And I'm talking the whole like standing and popping. It is the gnarliest on your body as well. And obviously when you go headfirst in a log, don't work out too good for you. The logs
that doesn't sound
move
too fun.
Too much,
No, yeah.
So, and then the American has the audacity to say that I was the out of control one when he was the one that came through and clipped my bars. So anyways.
Usually if there's rocks and logs on a track, I'm stopping and taking them off.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the one off I did.
Yeah.
But the other things is best whip contests and shit like that. So did good at that. Did one at F1, won that. So I was like, yeah, cool. There's a best whip at Sydney Supercross. Went there, won that. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. I want to go down. Like, I want to go to X Games and do best whip.
Mm-hmm.
Again, around all this, I'm still building a business and having kids. So, again, business was improving, and it's been a gradual build to this point. And I honestly think the last 3 years with the business, it's at its best. And to this day, like, I've built something that's successful.
Yep.
It's been a hard 10-year grind. But yeah, I just had to get out of my system all these adventures I wanted to go off and do, and the whip one was one thing, And then we got into the quarter pipe and stuff. So that was an investment that it took a long time to even get sorted. So getting the dirt to build something, so I scrapped my Supercross track, pushed it all up into a massive pile, still didn't get the down ramp right. I had a friend with a machine that lent the machine, and we got more and more dirt to build the biggest down ramp we could build, but also I had to buy the measurements for the ramp and shit and get a local welder. Yeah. So I bought them, like, I don't even know whether it was X Games or whatever, but you could buy the dimensions of what a quarter pipe needs to be. And yeah, that cost me $10,000 to build. Yeah. A lot of metal, and obviously building the up ramp. Then we got the down ramp. When the the digger driver had to get off the down ramp, he had his feet on the window with his boom down, and it was a monster of a down ramp. Still not big enough, and it was like near vertical. The down ramp almost scared me more than the up ramp. Yep. But the up ramp, the last 3 feet was 87 degrees. Yeah, right. So that's pretty much vertical. Yeah. So scariest thing I've ever done, but again, I was still after that thrill. Yeah. I was doing the whole whip thing. Quarter pipe was coming into X Games as well. Corey Creed had a lot of success with that. Every whip comp I went into and Corey Creed was there, he'd always finish behind me. Yeah. And all of a sudden he's going to X Games and stuff. I'm like, fuck. And then he's doing, quarter pipe. Not that, he was just setting the bench, and I'm just like, I want to go where he's going. Plus, still build a business and raise a family and all that. And it was just a little sidekick for me. And then, a bit too much. But was probably doing a bit too much. Yeah, it was, but again, it's sort of, I was juggling it all pretty well. Yeah. And then COVID hit. Yeah. And this is in the time when I got all that together and business was good, and then COVID hit and that just fucked everyone for a while. And it was 2 years, and so part of, even when we were locked down and stuff, I could still go out to the track because I needed to maintain it. For one, it was security as well. 2, I needed to maintain grass and all that, whatever. Yeah. Of course I'm going to take my bike and ride, of course. So in that time, and I had a few neighbours that snuck out of their zones, and friends that snuck out of their zone in the lockdown to come watch me. Yeah. Come watch me ride and whatever. And yeah, one of the days I started doing quarter pipe. And so we did it it was probably, I reckon I would have done over 500 jumps off of the thing. Yep. And I got pretty decent, and measuring the ramp and then measuring what I'd got to, I was at that time maybe 10 feet, 15 feet from gold medal, what Corey Creed had won. Yep. So then I started going into bike developing and stuff, and this is all during lockdown and whatever. And when you do it, and it was the scariest thing, and it's almost not enjoyable, but I kept on going back to it. I'd be like this, driving to the track, knowing that I'm doing quarter pipe. When they say, do you get addicted to that? Yeah, because I kept on doing it. Because you kept going back, yeah. It's like, to any sane person, they're like, why would you go and do that again? Yeah, and it's almost like a race. With racing, I'd lost it. With this, I feel that, and Corey Creed and all those guys that do it, like Axel Hodges and shit, are the gnarliest dudes, because I've been there and done it. I actually had friends say that, hey, I'll come hit the quarter pipe with you. They'd come and look at it and say, there's no fucking way. I seen Jared McNeil's, and I'm like, it felt like my first day ever trying to ride a bike. I just looked at it, I'm like, I don't even know how you do it. Like, what are you supposed to do with this thing? I've been by myself, 3 friends there watching, and I'm like, they're like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. Where do you go? I'm like, I think I just want to turn. Well, at the end of the day, you do these turning off it, that can jack you. That's how people get the in-swingers and... Oh, and you're trying to go straight. Yeah, you doing this, and then the back end starts dropping, and then your back end will overtake your front end, and then you're landing So it's scary shit. And the first time, I have never felt what I felt the first time I hit it. And I'm telling you how much I carved. And I've got photos in my phone, but I'm literally this high from the top of the up ramp, just carving across.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, that's sick. And then, but you do it once, it's not over. Like, you do it once, it's just like, fuck.
I think I'll go.
I gotta go again.
Yeah.
And you do it. And the thing with quarter pipe, and this is what I don't think everyone, like, the straighter you go, the higher you go. So the whole like jumping like this, you're never gonna get super high.
Yep.
So, but the straighter you go, and you have to carve a little bit. You literally cannot ride dead straight.
But you're
almost, yeah, it's not far off.
Because like you're landing probably 4 meters across from where you take off.
Well, Corey Creed's good at that because he nearly killed himself.
He nearly come back on the ramp.
He landed on the side of his down ramp.
Would that ever be possible to go up the up ramp and land down the up ramp?
No.
No.
You'd kill yourself. Because, as I said, the top part is, oh fuck man, you'd have to get it to the almost a millimetre to come back down. But it ain't gonna happen.
That'd be a cool visual.
But yeah, so that, and I just progressed with that and got half decent at it or whatever one of the days, and this is probably something that we'll talk about and touch on.
Well, I might. We're just running out of time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go and say sinks.
Yes.
So I'm thinking we
Fuck
might...
Sinks.
Fuck sinks? Do I yell that out?
Fuck you.
He has to go at 5.
Yeah.
That's all. But we might have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
Post-COVID.
Yeah.
Or post quarter pipe incident.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't the quarter pipe, just to let you know.
Was it?
No.
Oh.
It wasn't the quarter pipe. It was the 75 ramp.
Is that when it happened?
So just jumping, and it was doing a whip.
Okay.
So that was the whole thing, and that's what I was getting at. So developing the quarter pipe bike, that week I'd called Yamaha and asked for a second bike to make, because my quarter pipe bike, I couldn't ride on ramps. And the first time I rode it off a ramp, because I just didn't want to hit the quarter pipe straight up with all this new suspension and shit, I hit the ramp and I threw a whip and I fucking, not nearly crashed, but it was like real weird, and I nearly didn't bring it back and shit. And I'm like, fuck, it's hard to do a whip on it. And it's because it was so stiff, and I'm trying to make it stiffer. So, because I was still like just blowing through on the up ramp and blowing through on the down ramp.
And that's stiffer than Supercross suspension?
Oh, it was 3 spring rates heavier on my Supercross setting. So we were going to have to get into like...
Wow.
So
I didn't know such a setting existed.
I know. And uncomfortable bike.
Oh, you'd hate to ride that thing.
And I rang Yamaha to get another bike, and they said, yeah, no worries, we'll give you another bike or whatever. A week later,
cool.
I was supposed to ride quarter pipe, and the wind picked up. So I thought I'll have a play ride, hit the 75, and lights out.
So I've got written here, 21 bags of blood.
Yep.
Fractured the thoracic and dislocated the lumbar spine.
Yep.
You broke 17 ribs.
Yep.
Fractured your pelvis.
Yep.
Punctured both lungs.
Yep.
Fractured your C4 and your C5.
Yes. And what was the start? Ruptured the...
Punctured both lungs, fractured pelvis.
At the start.
Ruptured a major artery that needed 21 bags of blood.
That's the major one.
That was the big ticket?
Yeah. That was the one that near cost me my life, and I was just it's pure luck that it happened at my track. If it happened anywhere else, so they pretty much gave me no chance. Well, they had already called the coppers. You know, the cops turned up, set up the crime scene, put the little numbers around, pretty much drew a fucking picture where I was laying, interviewed the guys, took my bike. And the coppers met my wife at the hospital, and so they literally, and they said like that type of injury to my chest, 20% chance of living. So, and the only time they see it is on the big, freeway head-ons and shit like that. You know,
what's it from? Just such a brutal impact.
Yeah.
Wow.
So breaking that many bones, obviously I took it all on this side because I broke all these ribs on this side. I broke 6 on this side, but then broken this side pelvis, hip, you know, and then all the back and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bit of got knocked out for 7 minutes.
Wow.
So yeah,
That's about as close as it gets.
as close as you get to dying, close as you get to not walking. So when I did dislocate and everything, my spinal cord was kinked. So my wife gets to the hospital, the cops are there, and she obviously starts like, why are the police here? And like any wife would, you know, freak out. And all the lady said is like, your husband's sick and he really needs help. So it's something that for her, she went through hell and back and whatever, and I did make it through that. So this is at about six I think, because I crashed in the afternoon, and she found out 11 that I made it through the surgery, and I was stable, but I was obviously in a coma for a week. So I was a week in a coma, but the next day she goes in to see me, and she said it wasn't that you see on the movies, peacefully laying there or whatever. I was just hooked up to every machine, every tube down my throat, everything, whatever. And then they say that they had to take me in to try to fix my back, and there's a chance that he won't be walking again. So that was another thing so she got through the first one and then had to,
lived,
wait.
But what state?
Yeah. So, yeah, hectic.
And full recovery?
Full recovery, like
That's
6 months. So obviously, my lower back's fused now.
Yeah.
So, but doesn't really like putting on my socks. I reckon I'll eventually be just using slides. I won't be putting on socks. I won't be putting on shoes.
They didn't give you one of those sock pullers that they give you in the hospital?
No, well, I'll be getting one, that's for sure. And at the moment, it's quite funny with my kids getting dressed for riding. The hardest part about riding for me these days, so people say it doesn't hold you back and it looks like you're better than ever, and I honestly feel I'm better than ever. I had yesterday, I had probably one of my best rides I've had in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, relaxed, but super fast, doing like stuff that I don't normally do. And I've been running this place for 10 years.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was doing shit that I hadn't been really doing. So I just at a stage where everything's good.
How old are you again?
Was that 41?
41.
And the hardest part about riding these days is putting me socks on, man. Me riding socks. Like, it is the amount of Alpine Stars riding socks I've ripped, because I'm trying to pull from almost my...
It's too far away.
It's just too far away and I can't lean down. Getting your lower lumbar fuse, you lose that movement.
From age 14 when you started, to your factory rides, to KTM, to your KTM, to Dakar,
yep,
into working the quarry, to racing again, to your quarter pipe, to your whip. If you can only just struggle to put your socks on, you've
doing all right.
Had a pretty good run.
Hey,
I reckon.
I've heard of concreters that got worse injuries. Well, you would know that.
There's some days my socks, they're just too far away.
Yeah, and dads have had their back fused because their back's fucked from working.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got a pretty cool story to tell.
You've probably ridden more than anyone else up to the age of 41 as well.
Yeah.
If you were to add up the hours.
Yep. Oh, 100%. And
like
the amount of laps
over your life. Yeah.
Yep. Because I still cut a lot of laps. Like yesterday I was doing 15-minute motors and stuff.
Yeah.
To the point where I'd got myself like working life, normal life, and I was a rider that never suffered arm pump. The whole career I never really suffered arm pump. If I did get it, it means I was like really uncomfortable with either the track or my setting or something.
Yeah.
So I never really had to deal with it. And then all of a sudden, holding a fire hose for years and years, and I was still moto and I'm doing 30-minute motos and shit. But with that, with holding kids, picking up kids, still trying to train, all these like heavy lifting and shit, I got to a point where my arms were that fatigued and weak, and I don't know, I was just having the worst arm for like 4 years. I came back after riding Rosebud, of all tracks. I couldn't even do 3 laps. I said to my wife, if this is riding, I'm done. I can't do more. I've got the business, I'll just run the business, whatever. I'll just retire and just be a 2-lap sort of dude at my track.
Yeah.
And I said, nah, fuck that. And I got the arm pump surgery. I tried everything. I tried everything. Yeah, it's relieved it. And I'm back to like...
Crazy.
Yeah, I'm back to doing motos and stuff. It's still, again, life in general, it catches up. I hold kids. You got a house to maintain. You got work to do. I've got a harness, but you still got to hold hoses and shit and whatever to water the track.
Yeah.
But I still enjoy riding that much, and I'm not ready to give it up. Like I think I've got my whole life to sit back and like do nothing and enjoy my kids or whatever. Right now, I'm enjoying doing it and doing it with my kids because my 2 sons love it. My daughter rides, but not that interested in it, and I've got a business around it. And like I say, I also do coaching, and I love to set the tone. I think it's good that a coach can get out there and do it still at a high level, because the way I ride my track, and I haven't ridden too many other tracks. I've been riding Rosebud lately with some training groups, and it's slowly coming back to me, but the way I ride them is still at a high level, straight up. And I think that is important. If I'm going to tell someone to go do something, I think that's important for me to know what they're going through, sort of thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's 2 classifications for being a coach. Either you've got to ride yourself really quick, or you've taken a rider from like a really young age to the top.
Yep.
And seen what worked.
Yeah.
Through that, or done it yourself to figure out what worked.
Yep.
And other than that, it's like, yeah, you can try, but...
Yeah, exactly.
Happy days, mate.
No,
we'll wrap it up. I think we'll have to
Sweet.
do a part 2 to get the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm always here, man. You just let me know.
Shit hot.
Sick.
Legend. Appreciate it, mate.
Thank you.